Okay, so in this session we are going to tackle question 2, question 4 up to 10. So the second question states that differentiate between IAS, PAS, and SAS. Also remembering that we should give real world examples. Yeah, so IAS, what is IAS? So IAS is just infrastructure as a service. So what is an infrastructure? So I want us to understand some certain terminologies so that as we get to differentiate these models, we understand where they are coming from and what role they play. Okay, so what then is an infrastructure? So an infrastructure just means things needed for something to work. For example, I would say for you to cook, what things do you need for you to cook what you want to cook? For example, shim. Of course, you will need charcoal, you will need meal, you will need water. So those are the things that you need for you to cook. And in cloud computing, this means something. So infrastructure in cloud computing just means you need servers, you need storage, you need databases, you need networking equipment, also web servers. So these are the things that you need to these are the things you need. That's what an infrastructure means. And then when we look at as a service, because we just looked at infrastructure. So when we look at as a service, what does this mean? So when we talk about as a service, this means you don't own it, you rent it or use it when needed through the internet. So you just rent these infrastructures over the internet. You don't own them. Some certain companies they have those data centers, but you are just being given opportunity to use them for whatever reason you want to use those servers or the storage of course through the internet. Okay, I would give a scenario. Imagine for this one, you excuse me, in the whole lot of this session I'll be giving scenarios related to soccer, and if yeah, I'll be just combining soccer, anything that comes to mind. Yeah, so imagine your football team wants to train. So you want your team to train. So basically you have two choices. Okay, the option number one that you're going to have. So as a service, like I said, as a service, you don't own it. You don't own it. You What do? You just you rent. Okay, so a scenario a scenario about soccer. Okay, so I'll give notes on what I'm trying to present. So you own a football academy and you want your players to train. So you basically have two options, because one, you don't have a ground where to train from. Yeah, you don't have all the equipments needed for your players to use for them to train. So what do you do? So you have option number one. Option number one, for your players to train, meaning you have to buy everything on your own. So what are you going to buy? You need to buy a stadium or a training ground. You need to buy balls. You need to buy training equipment for your players to train. So when you look at it, it is very expensive if you are starting if you are just starting. Okay, and then you have option number two. What are you going to do if you don't have money to buy your own stadium, the training equipment. So the option number 2 is to look for training facilities, where they rent training facilities, where they provide you with everything. So you just rent. What are the things that you are going to find there when you rent? Of course, you find the pitch ready. The pitch will be provided for you. Goalposts. Okay, you have all the training space. As long as you pay for this infrastructure, all these things will be provided for you. And when you look at it, you won't even spend much money compared to you buying your own stadium or your own training equipment. So that's basically what infrastructure as a service is. So when we look at it in terms of cloud computing, so the cloud company will give you servers, storage, network, and databases. Okay, so they'll just give you those equipments or those infrastructures, and then you have to manage everything on your own, setting them up, configuring the servers. Okay, so that's your task. You just rent their infrastructures, and then all the maintenance will be on your part. It's you now to maintain those servers. So that's about infrastructure as a service. So to give it a definition, like what's the proper definition I would give it, or what is infrastructure as a service? So infrastructure as a service is a way of renting computer infrastructure over the internet. Okay, so it's just the process or a way of renting computer infrastructure over the internet, other than buying your own hardware. Okay, so that's basically what an infrastructure as a service means. So we now go to what we call platform as a service, which we saw earlier. Platform as a service, it was initialized as PAS. So this is just platform. Okay, this is basically just platform as a service. With this one also, we are going to look at each term, what each term means. So we are going to look at what a platform is and what as a service is. Of course, as a service remains the same, which basically means you don't own it, you just rent it. Okay, so what then is a platform? So a platform is a place or environment where work happens or takes place from. So this is just an environment. Think of it like, I believe that we've done web development. So where you write your codes, that place where you write your code, run your code, that's an environment where you do your project. Same applies to C programming. Code blocks is an environment where you write C programming projects or C++ projects. So same applies to what we have here, like in cloud computing. So a platform is just an environment where you work from, or where things takes place from. Think of it, I would give an example of a certain website. We have W3 schools. So when you search for W3 schools, this is just an environment which was created for all the programming languages. You can learn Python there, you can learn C++, you can learn any language that you want. And then they already have an environment where you can write code, test your code if it's working and all that. So that's the best example I would give when it comes to a platform. Okay. So that's the best example I would give when it comes to a platform. So a platform is just an environment where you work, where you do your work, or where work takes place from. Yeah. So what then in cloud computing is a platform? So in cloud computing would describe or define a platform as an environment where developers can build, test, and run applications. So there are cloud agents or cloud providers who provide you with these environments where you can write your code, build applications, and learn applications. So you don't necessarily need to install a certain application or a certain software for you to prepare that environment. So cloud providers or cloud services will provide you with that environment. Okay, so what then is as a service mean? Like we said, it just means you use or rent it through the internet instead of building everything yourself. Okay, so that's about it. Platform as a service. That's about platform as a service. This takes us now to if we look at the difference, because we've been asked to look at the difference. So IaaS, the provider for IaaS only gives you the basic infrastructures. Like I said, they'll only give you servers. So IaaS will give you servers, basic servers, storage. Okay, they'll give you these basic things. So what happens is that you yourself have to configure the servers. You have to configure them yourself. Even when you configure the servers, when your system starts running, when you encounter an error, it's you now to start debugging where the error occurred from. Okay, and then platform as a service will provide you with everything. All you need is just to focus on writing code, building applications, and all that.